Hello, welcome to this video. Today I am going to go through my process on animating this sequence. So right now, I've got shot 18 soloed out, so it's just going to focus on shot 18, but so I'm on shot 18, but then there's a character in the back that I still need to animate. So to just focus on 18, I just go L1 and then L3 to trim the timeline to this area. So now when I go into play mode, you'll just focus on shot 18. So I can review what's going on. So I like to have a little bit before shot 18 so that everything registers before the shot actually happens. To animate the character in the back, I just scope into shot 18, solo the timeline, and then this is the master timeline that contains the film, so I put it up the top, and then this is my layers down here, or I just put it up here as a reference guide. So I have inside this timeline John, Goon 2, Goon 3, and Goon 1. So I'm going to be animating Goon 3 today. So to animate, I just make the bars smaller so I can see what the camera is looking at, and press play. Go into edit so that I'm in the camera's angle, and then hide all the cameras so now I've got a good angle of what the camera is looking at. And I'll just solo shot 18. And now I'm ready to animate the character in the background, which is barely visible but still needs to move in the scene. So I've got the main action already animated. So now I'm just going to focus on this character so I can also solo his timeline. And when I animate him, I can hide everything else and just focus on his movement here. But right now I've noticed this timeline is way too long. So I'm just going to trim it down to the length the shot is, which is about 44 frames. Okay, so I'll just delete the last key and then pose the character similar to the reference. So I need to first convert his everything to IK. So I animate in IK first and then convert it to FK whenever I need to. Because IK just makes things so much easy. The hip and the spine is the main thing I look at, and the shoulders. So, and also the head position. Those are the main things that I worry about first, and the feet. So just make sure the feet is kind of posed the way I want it to be. And then try to pose it based on what the camera is looking at and what the camera sees. And just try to get the pose as as accurate to the frame as possible. And if you can do that multiple times along each frame or whatever, or the key frames, then the dreams will interpolate the rest of the in-betweens, so it's just like easy. If you get good key poses, like animating this is like super easy to do. But when I'm posing a character, I look for the silhouette to determine whether it's a good pose. I kind of judge whether it's anticipating another kind of key pose or not, just making sure like it's anticipating into the next key, and then, you know, making sure the line of action like makes sense, and if it's like similar to the reference that I'm looking at. So the next pose is on frame 5, but it's very difficult to see what he's doing because the footage, you know, he is actually obscured behind John and the main action happening in front. So I do have some improvisation that I can do with the animation, but I want to base it on the reference and try to do it logically. So he's kind of skipping to the body in the back, and it's like a few skips. So he pulls out the knife as well. It's very hard to see in the footage, but he pulls out a knife from his shoulder. But that will give me enough info to do it. I just need to know the intention and what is happening in the scene before I start doing the key poses. And here I want to drag the movement so that it flows from one pose to the next, so there should be some drag. And drag, you know, it can be exaggerated with the springiness in dreams. Just making sure the silhouette makes sense, and I want to check out the camera angle, see what it's looking at. This is what you see him do. Like, you're barely going to notice him anyway, but he needs to be alive in the background. So go with frame 12. We'll just focus on the feet, and we'll worry about the top part later. So we'll copy the keyframe across to 12. Something that I need to be aware of as well as the thermometer is slowly creeping up, and I need that percentage to complete the sequence. Not sure how that's going to be possible, but I think frame 9 is when he pulls out the knife there. So this should actually be frame 9. Frame 9, which is 10 in dreams, because it doesn't count the 0. But basically, that's the last point of contact when he pulls out the knife. He's just skipping along here. So I want to kind of drag it to emphasize some kind of weight, and kind of twist the foot a little. So most of the energy is in this foot and the weight shifting over to this side. And this is an anticipation before he pulls out the knife. So I'm gonna twist his arm a bit and maybe kind of push down on the arm, and maybe move his neck a little bit to kind of put pressure on that arm which hasn't played. Is the next key pose for this guy. So I usually scale it up to get the timing right, and then once I get the timing right, I scale it down, and then I can go in and adjust it. And I want to make that line of action follow like the movement, like the pivot point makes sense and stuff. And then maybe he's twisting this way just a tad and leaning the weight on the foot. Or shifting weight actually, so it should be this way. Because he's anticipating to skip the next step. So you just want to make sure the key pose, like, it makes sense. And it's anticipating the next step. So in a way, this is like pose to pose and straight ahead at the same time. So the next pose is going to be 16, but then there's an up pose at 14. So we can't have 16 without like an arc, which 15 will be the arc of the movement. So we're going to have a nice arc, so it's not going to be a linear movement this way. It's going to go up a little bit before he steps down. So there's going to be an arc, and then he's putting his weight on this foot, and this foot goes up a little bit, getting ready to step here. And I'm just going to make sure like this arm is where it needs to go. So this arm actually goes in after he pulls it because he's in pain. Yep. And this arm would kind of be dragged because it's injured. And we'll just kind of drag him back a little bit, leaving his weight on this foot. The next step is on 16. So this is all the key poses that, you know, sit still and is readable. It's not in the middle of motion. These are key poses that tell the story, that progress the character. So there's a nice arc going down, and this foot needs to be flat. And I just want to make sure like there's a shift in weight here. There's some drag. Make sure the arm has some kind of drag to it. And we'll just move him up a little bit so that, because he's just made contact, like he's not actually pressing his weight down yet. And we'll just kind of emphasize that. It's nice to see the arc as well. Like, not many 3D programs do that. You have to actually install a plugin to be able to see the arc of motion. But Dreams, you know, is amazing. You can see the arc. Okay, so the next pose is on 20. And this is a down pose. He's putting his weight on the foot now. So all I need to do is make him go down like this and shift him a little bit, just like this, and have him kind of anticipate. So this is an anticipation pose. And he's also pressing his weight. Like, so this is squash as well, so there should be some squash. So he's squashing down, stretch, squash. And I'll just emphasize exaggerated. Because then he lifts the foot. So he lifts his foot up here, so then there's another shift in weight, like this. I'm trying to see, like, try to read what he's doing, you know, what is he thinking about and why is he doing it, just so I can be informed, you know, on how to animate him. So he's actually breaking this bit of glass here to get more weapons. That's what he's doing. So this arm is actually up like this. Just making sure like that I've spaced it properly so that he can do the action. So now that I know what he's doing, I can then kind of plan it out better. He might not be breaking the glass, but he is reaching in there, grabbing something. So I'm gonna, yeah. So this foot is now down, but I want him to actually reach the thing. So I'm gonna grab these and kind of twist the foot a little bit. He's just made a contact pose, so he wouldn't actually be pushing down yet. This feels a bit awkward because there's no balance to it. There's no balance to the pose. It looks like he's gonna fall over. I'm gonna go with 30 here. 31 is when he moves his foot across. So this is like a follow through. So he's moving his foot across. Like it's a little bit of a skip that he does. So he's kind of skips into the glass here. Maybe he doesn't want any glass to go in his face, so he'll kind of face the other way. I still have no idea how this is going to turn out, but hopefully it'll be pretty cool. Then this will be up. And it looks like he's grabbing some stuff, so then this hand, and he's kind of like this now, just in the middle of grabbing stuff. So then 43 is the last pose here. And since he's in the background, it's not going to really pay much attention to it, but his foot is flat now. He's leaning in. This foot would be twisted a little bit, I imagine. And he's leaning on to this foot now. And we'll just see how that looks. I mean, it's not bad, not bad. I think this foot is not meant to twist. It looks weird when it twists. I mean, it's happening in the background, so we're not going to notice. But he needs to be doing something, right? The main thing we're looking at is John beating the hell out of this guy, but he's not even in the shot. So I don't know if it's worth polishing. But since I love to polish stuff, I then go back and think of the eases So I'm kind of going, okay, he's pressing down on that foot, so it'll be an ease out, goes up, and then he might ease into this one. Ease out again. So this one is an ease in. This one might be a bit of like an S curve. And this one can be an ease out to get that impact. This can be an S curve here. Or like, since it continues into the next shot, this would be, yeah, that makes sense. So no one is ever that like stiff. So what I do when things start to feel stiff, I kind of loosen it up a bit with the springiness. And most of the time, it'll give you the micro movements that you want to kind of give it a little bit more like physics to it. So here, I might add some springiness here to emphasize like the squash and the stretch. And that just smooths out the movement a bit better. Then I look at whether there's any popping in the elbows or anything like that, and it looks like there are. So what I do now is convert everything to FK, and that should smooth out the arcs and also fix the popping issues. It's just like magic. It's just like a cheat button, basically. So then I just go in and just smooth out that those arm movements like that. The legs are working fine. If you do FK on the legs, it'll clip through the floor, so I don't do that. So then I just do it for his arms because they need those smooth arcs. And it looks like it gives those smooth arcs that I want. And that is basically how I animate a scene. And then I might go back and clean a few things up here and there, but you know, that's pretty much the gist of like every shot that I do and every character that I do. So including John and this guy falling on the floor, like the same kind of workflow applies to every single movement. And that is basically how I animate the characters in Dreams. And you barely notice him.